Alrighty, I see we have a bunch of people that just joined, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Stephanie, and I work at the Monrovia Public Library, and this is our Live with Locals series. We are here today with City Manager Dylan Feik, and I'm so excited to have you here today to talk a little bit about the Bobcat Fire, the Tubbs Fire, and some additional things. For folks that are interested in learning more about our Book to Action series, you can visit the library webpage. And with that, we'll dive right in. And I wanted to just begin by sharing how excited I was at the beginning of this project to speak with you. You were one of the first people that came to mind because you had just so eloquently shared with us in an email your experience about the Tubbs Fire. And that was an experience that we just really thought could kind of drive home the why in terms of sustainability, why things are so important, and the devastation that people can really experience when we don't take certain steps to help take care of our planet, and then we have these wildfires and other catastrophic events. And so I'm really thrilled to be speaking with you today.
Well, thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time doing Instagram Live, so you might have to bear with me if there's technical difficulties, but I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll totally get through it together. So to start off, let's just kind of dive in with the Bobcat Fire. As a city manager, what is your role in responding to that? Is it a lot of coordinating efforts? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. The city managers in California, they essentially are the chief operating officer, chief executive officer of our city governments. So we have elected city councils, and they hire professional staff to run day-to-day operations of the city. And so that's what the city manager is. I'm the one employee that the city council hires to run the day-to-day operations, which include everything from ensuring that you've got clean drinking water coming to your tap, helping oversee library services and programs, to paving roads, building parks. We have police department, fire department, and then everything in between. But more recently, city managers are often seen as emergency managers. It's definitely a part of the job. And under California government code, as well as our own municipal code, since the early 1980s, the city council has designated their city manager as the emergency services director. So what that essentially means is in times of emergency, whether it's declared by the city council or even by the governor of the state of California, that the city manager is granted some additional powers, if you will, to be able to make decisions and direct work in the time of crisis. So I've got the ordinance, which is section 2, chapter 44 of our municipal code. You can go look yourselves, but just let me read, if I could, just a couple of the different items, which sometimes are a little bit, but obviously emergency services director, you would think, could control and direct any emergency organization effort in the city, direct cooperation between and coordination of services with public-private agencies. But also emergency services directors get to make and issue rules and regulations on matters reasonably related to the protection of life and property. Now, this is a little bit different than normal because typically city councils are your legislative bodies. They adopt policies, the rules of the city, and in cases of emergency, the city manager is able to do that. However, those rules have to come back to city council for ratification as soon as reasonably possible.
Yeah.
But I'm also able to require and even compel employees to return to the city and serve as emergency workers, which is very important. When there is a major crisis like a Bobcat Fire, we need all hands on deck. And fortunately, we have a phenomenal staff here at the city. I don't have to compel anybody. They're here before I get here. So amazing people who train, who practice, and who are ready to go in a moment's notice. And so when the Bobcat Fire came, we had been working and preparing for possible wildfires for some time. We always have, from wildfire protection plans, community-wide protection plans, to even last summer in May, the California Office of Emergency Services updated its standard terminology for terms used during wildfire season. Terms like evacuation warning and evacuation order were first commonly used last year. We took the initiative update our own policies and procedures to ensure that terminology is what we were using. We did that in May. So come September, when the Bobcat fire was here in town, we were able to use words like evacuation warning with clear definition of what they were. And in fact, that wasn't the case in all the cities who were responding to the fire. Some were still using old, outdated terminology, and it created a little bit of confusion for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that's essentially what I would say as an emergency services director or a city manager. And it's not just the Bobcat fire, but also emergencies like this global pandemic. We're currently in a period of emergency related to the pandemic. Last year, we had a period of emergency we called civil unrest following the death and murder of George Floyd. There was a series of weeks where we were very concerned about widespread looting and crime. And so we had an emergency activation at that point as well. And who knows when the next one could be.
Yeah, and it's from what you're sharing, it sounds like that. I can imagine that's quite the mental load that you have to take on during those times. And I even remember kind of reflecting on when you came to join us, and it was maybe 4 or 5 months later, and then the pandemic. And then after that, we experienced, the civil unrest. And then, a few months after that, it's the Bobcat fire. So, wow, what quite a journey for you in your first couple of years here as a city manager. Could you speak, while we're on that topic, could you speak a little bit about what that's like as a city manager to be, the person when it comes to emergency operations for a city?
First of all, it is not a one-man show, and it's certainly something that I'm just one part of a much broader effort. I could not do my job without hundreds of wonderful people who do their job so well. It really is a team effort. Everything we do here in Monrovia is a team effort. I think, the way I look at my role is how can I help, how can I elevate others to perform their very best? There's no time we need to excel more as government employees than during times of crisis and emergency. I think that, having your clean water delivered to your tap every day, it's normal. People expect it. Having your roads surfaced and sidewalks repaired and trees trimmed, that's all just kind of normal operations. But when there's an emergency, residents expect us to step up and to serve them. And, we certainly can't do it without hundreds of wonderful people who have trained and prepared for just that day. So what goes through my mind, I'll be honest, I'm afraid, I'm scared. Wildfire is scary. Unfortunately, I've managed cities through multiple fires now. So I've done it before, but it's still scary to me. And I think use that knowledge and that experience to help me guide me through the decisions that we need to make as we, live through wildfire. It's a tough job. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but at the same time, I'm so proud and happy to be the Monrovia city manager. There's nothing I want to do but be the Monrovia city manager. And I feel like it's a calling and a wonderful blessing that I can be here serving this community, especially as I have over the last year. I mean, you're right, Stephanie. When I started, like 4 months, I didn't even get to visit all of the restaurants on Myrtle Avenue, and then there were dining. Like that's how fast it. And so I've certainly learned about our community from a different vantage point than I think most city managers get to learn from. But I still think it's important that I connect to people, connect to business owners in ways that might be virtual or might be socially distant during the last 14 months. But I think city managers need to be crisis managers, and we need to be ready for this type of emergency event to happen because they're just seem to be happening more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with what you said about that sense of community and team and everyone working together when it comes to Monrovia. You shared a little bit about how there's that ability to call employees back in to work as emergency responders. And I remember working the emergency call center at the community center, and just the feeling that sense of purpose that I think a lot of us had while we were there for serving the community, for taking care of each other and trying to give each other breaks when we were working long shifts. And then the community then, you know, with that outpour of support and wanting to help the firefighters, wanting to help the city and their neighbors, there's just, I don't know, I haven't experienced anything quite like that in any other city. So I can really relate to the sentiment that you shared about Monrovia. And I wanted to bring it back now to what you mentioned about how this is the second kind of experience that you've had managing a city during times of wildfire. And as I recall, your last experience was 2017 with the Tubbs fire in the city of Calistoga. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So could you share a little bit about that experience and how it compares to the Bobcat fire? Any, you know, lesson learned between the two, and then just, you know, what that was like for you and the two different communities that you served.
Well, thank you. I used to measure my life from October 8th, 2017, before and after, which was when the Tubbs started. And now I do it September 6th, 2020, excuse me, for the Bobcat, right? Significant moments in my life that, you know, alter who I am forever. You don't ever go back. The Tubbs fire was very different, and you know, not all wildfires are the same, but I'll tell a little bit, if I could. I'll tell the story from my mind in a few moments about the Tubbs fire. So on October 8th, 2017, it was a Sunday night, and I was getting ready to go to bed. We had red flag alerts like we typically do up in the Bay Area, and the winds were going to get really fast. And we weren't sure exactly how fast, but projected to be upwards of 75 miles an hour. Around 9:45 at night, we started receiving calls, and the region received calls about all the different fires that were starting from down power lines. There was about a little over 116 fires that were started all across the region. As I got a call that a fire had ignited in Calistoga, I actually lived west of Calistoga on the other side of the mountains, the Mayacamas Mountains, and it was only a 20-minute drive. However, it was through the area that the fire was quickly burned. So by the time the fire was out, it was burning in Calistoga, and I thought to myself, I need to drive around the area. So basically go south around the mountain, because I did not want to drive through the mountain with the fire. As I drove, I passed about 5 separate fires burning, and I had to drive all the way down across several different state highways, all the way down to Vallejo, and then over towards American Canyon, and then north back up through Napa and through the Napa Valley. So what normally takes me 20 minutes took me about 2 hours. And at one point, I was driving for 100 miles an hour through the Napa Valley. I'm probably the only person ever to do that, because you can't to get there. Within a matter of hours, the fire had moved the 15 miles west into Santa Rosa. Just for comparison's sake, when the wind gusts were measured, the wind was blowing in excess of 100 miles an hour in gusts that night, which moves a fire about 1 football field every 2 seconds. So wow. you don't outrun that kind of fire. And it's blowing embers, it's called ember casting. It's blowing embers miles down the road, and it's igniting fires further down than where that fire line currently is. So this moved incredibly fast. And before morning, and the homes were burning, you know, there were already, you know, deaths. There were already homes burned, and I believe the total number was about 5,600 homes were burned, and an entire complex over those couple about the week that the Tubbs fire burned. There was 24 deaths, and there's quite a few more structures burned. About 110,000 acres of fire burned. What some people don't remember is that the Tubbs fire was only one of several large fires all burning at the time. So we actually refer to it as the Napa Lake Sonoma Complex. 3 large fires burned 7,000 structures, killed 24 people. And this is just one fire. There were 3 years of consecutive fires, over 20 lost in Napa Lake Sonoma counties during the 2016, 17, 18 period. The Tubbs fire continued to, while one arm went westward and burned through Santa Rosa, there was a large section of the fire which hovered right there north of Monrovia for the entire week. We had 6 consecutive nights of red flag warnings, which meant you're not sleeping at night because you're watching to see if that fire is going to push down the hill. And we were very, very blessed. There was nothing we could do, but fortunately the fire never came south into Calistoga. We still had made the decision to evacuate the community. And I can talk about that if you'd like, but just speaking, you had 2 very different types of fires. And, from a Tubbs fire perspective, it was wind driven. It happened late in the middle of the night. We didn't have any time to prepare. There was 50,000 people displaced across a 3-county region, very rural roads with very limited access. And it also happened to be October, which is the busiest month of the year for all Napa Valley tourism, Napa and Sonoma. So it was very complicated, and it's very different than here in Monrovia with the Bobcat fire. Not a wind-driven event; it was terrain-driven. There were a lot of circumstances that affected, like the lack of resources. At the same time as the Bobcat fire was burning, I believe it was 5% of the entire population of the state of Oregon had been evacuated from their homes. So wildfires all up and down the West Coast, pulling resources towards them. So our fire was not a priority, and it didn't get needed until in the end of the 2 weeks. So 2 different circumstances, 2 different fires. I think the lesson I learned as a manager each day is that you constantly have to learn, you have to evolve, you have to process information quickly, you have to collaborate with people around you, because there are times where I wanted to make decisions. Like if it was up to me, there were 2 times where I was going to evacuate the northern half of the town. And fortunately, we had great people around who felt, now's not the time. Let's get some more information. We did not feel it was necessary. As a team, we did not feel it was necessary to evacuate. And we always felt like we had ample time if we needed to evacuate. That's another key point. But very different experience. One certainly prepared me for the other, but wouldn't wish kinds of experiences on anybody, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you so much for sharing your experience with that. I know that just as Californians, I think I've mentioned this in a few of our other interviews, it's just this wildfires is this thread that kind of weaves us all together. And when we speak about it, I think it can take us to a really difficult place of fear, because it comes up every year, and so thank you for being willing to share about that. And I also really was really looking forward to you sharing that, because my hope is that the community understands how truly lucky we were, for this, that it could have been so much worse. And so that, not to say that it's still not, a devastating event for all around, but I think that it kind of gives us a sense, seeing other fires and the devastation that other people face. I think that might give us, just this constant understanding about the choices that we make and how important they are to impact the planet and to help prevent these wildfires. So thank you for sharing that and being willing to speak on that.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome. We're all in it together in times of emergency, right? There's, everyone is a victim, and there are times where some people lose homes, but the next neighbors don't. And while the victims who lose homes are, mourning and sad and have to recover and rebuild, you also have a situation where there are those left with standing homes who wonder, why me? And why am I okay? Why is my home okay in the midst of all this destruction? And that very serious mental toll on those people as well. You know, when the Tubbs fire happened, if you remember, around that time, there was a lot of national discussion about immigration. And one of the stories that I remember so clearly was there was a resident in Calistoga who was undocumented worker, and he called and asked, you know, what do I do? I need to evacuate. What do I do? Where do I go? And this person was told, grab all your important documents, everything you need, and get out. And he grabbed his utility bills. Of all the important documents for him to grab, it was his utility bills to make sure he could pay his bills on time. You know, that man went on to stand in lines because there was no federal aid or federal assistance for him. And it opens my eyes to, you know, when there's a crisis, we are all one. Like, all the other issues tend to matter a lot less. We're all together. And I think that's just so important that we all recognize after having our own emergency. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you touch on something that we, this Book to Action Libraries, there is a large group of us that are participating in this program this year. You touched on the mental health aspect of sustainability, which is something that we've been having these conversations as a sustainability team, and how a lot of the, you know, issues that are at the forefront of our minds just as human beings right now, they're all interconnected. Sustainability, people have real feelings related towards disasters and what they go through in these experiences, and then just the general fear about the health of our planet and climate change and things like that. So I'm so glad that you bring that up, because, you know, I think, you know, one thing we're trying to pose to everyone that's going on this Book to Action journey with us is that sustainability isn't just addressing climate change. It isn't just addressing agriculture. It's also the very real and difficult feelings and challenging emotions that we all feel surrounding the issue. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think, you know, we're all finding over time that, you know, mental health definitely is a factor in sustainability. So. To kind of, you know, bring us out of the wildfire topic, something potentially a little lighter, can you tell us a little bit more about the environmental impact survey? I've been seeing a lot about it on social media and online, and I'm so excited to hear more about it and share that with our audience.
So there's a lot of work that the city is doing, work related to, I'm going to call it post-fire mitigation, but also a tool we're adopting called the environmental justice element, which is part of our plan. So we have a couple different things we're doing. Let me start with the post-fire mitigation efforts. So after fire season comes flood and mudslide season. October 15th through April 15th every year is the designated storm season in the state of California. And so we had prepared quite a bit of work up in the northern section of Monrovia, specifically the Oak Glade and Ridgeside Drive neighborhoods, installed K-rail, and, you know, we've done a lot of outreach with neighbors to prepare them for the possibility of mud and debris flow. On January 29th, we had a little bit of rainfall, and it resulted in quite a bit of mud and debris filling up some of those drainage areas in the northern part of the city. Fortunately, we didn't see too much beyond that, but that's always a possibility. And as we look to the next several years, we expect there to be significant debris flow up above Canyon Park, our wilderness preserve, for up to 5 years. The hills won't regenerate their vegetation for approximately 5 years. So we look forward to seeing more green grow. We look forward to doing some what we call fuel reduction. So there's still about 100 acres of land between the burn area and some of our northernmost Monrovia homes that didn't burn. We want to make sure and go through those areas and try and trim them down and reduce the amount of fire fuel, if you will. So that's going to be some work we do. And even right now, as we speak, our fire department is working closely with over 1,400 homes up in northern Monrovia related to our brush removal program, which is a wonderful program. Residents remove all the brush and debris off their properties. They get free bins to dump it. Well, technically speaking, it's built into our trash, into our rate structure. So technically we pay for it, but there's not many programs like it here in the foothills. It's a wonderful program where residents can take part in reducing the amount of the risk reduction in the foothills. It's so important. So that's an important activity we do after the fires. And we'll be working through these efforts for several years. We approved some of our first contracts just recently at a council meeting for building retaining walls and restoring some trails up in Canyon Park. We're trying very hard to be able to reopen Canyon Park as soon as we can, even if we can only open it for a portion of the summer and we close it down again for the winter time. But we still have rocks and debris rolling down the hills, and it's very important that we make sure we provide a safe experience if we're to open that. But the other activity we're doing, which is very important, is every several years we update our general plan. And this year, we're updating our housing element of the general plan, which the housing element there's basically an 8-year cycle for us to make sure that we're accommodating the city and the region's needs related to housing. But as part of that effort, we update a new section of our general plan called environmental justice. And this environmental justice element is a very important component where we're looking at not just planning and land use issues, but we're looking at issues related to the environment. How close are people to food and like grocery stores? How close are they to parks? Are their neighborhoods walkable? How about tree plantings? And we rate, and there's a very complex survey that's done where we look at we call it the environmental justice component of our planning and land use decisions. We want to make sure that as Monrovia moves into the future, that we are not just building more housing, but building housing in a way that really does enhance quality of life, especially as it relates to, I'm going to call it environmentally related issues. So walkability of neighborhoods, sidewalks, accessibility for persons with disabilities. We're looking at access to food, access to clean food. We're looking at whether certain communities are more, do they have too much industrial smog and air pollution around their neighborhoods? We want to look at this a little bit differently than we've ever looked at it before, and make sure that growing into the future, we're doing things a little bit different. And I think that's, to me, that's very exciting. We encouraged our residents to participate. There's been a lot of participation thus far, and we look forward to completing that project for the next several months, and then eventually submitting that to the state for approval.
Yeah. Wow, that is a lot, and that is very exciting to hear. We see a lot coming out in the news, just different articles about how again, just the intersection between all of these important topics about how sustainability and climate justice gets into food security, how they're all kind of related. And so that makes me really proud to work for a city that's very much tackling these issues and keeping its residents at the forefront of their minds and just really striving to tackle these issues. That's so exciting. Wow. I'm a little speechless at that. That's so cool. Okay, so then I think we're kind of heading towards the end of our questions here. So I'm going to pose this to the audience. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask, please feel free to type those in the comments, or you can use the question button that's kind of at the bottom of the screen, and we'll keep an eye on those and I can relay those. But last but not least, you touched on this a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about where we're at with Canyon Park and what we can expect to see in the next couple months?
We have a couple meetings scheduled, in fact, next week with various agencies, state, federal, even local county agencies, to look at different impacts of the fire. So we've got a lot of erosion going on. Even the road up to Trask needs to be repaired. It's in significantly bad shape. We have just a lot of work to do, frankly. And in some cases, one of the things we may need is time. We just may need there to be time to allow those steep upper hillsides to establish more vegetation, have roots take hold, and prevent further erosion coming down the hill. But what I think in the next 2 months residents will see is they'll see us doing some of the miscellaneous repair work to some of like the Monrovia Falls Trail. We've got wonderful Monrovia Canyon Park volunteers who have already been working up there to repair the trails. They've been doing that for a long time. We have a statewide award-winning team of volunteers who do a phenomenal job. And so we expect to see more of that going on over these next couple months. Our hope is that by mid-summer, we'll be able to open Canyon Park. If we can't get access onto some of the off-road paths, even to allow people access onto the paved roadways, and maybe let people walk up there, but perhaps we restrict vehicle access. We don't know yet. Yeah. We want to get people into that park as quickly as we can, but we need to do it safely. Yeah. One of the things we started doing it was probably 6 months ago now, we began working with a team of local photographers. We invited up into the park to help us document and tell the story of the damage. We got a lot of great footage and pictures of wildlife, of burned area, but also document the regrowth and the restoration that's been taking place. They go up there every couple weeks to take more pictures. We've even been able to get some amazing drone footage up there of the area and show, where the damage happened and kind of what's going on from a different vantage point. So there's a lot of things we're doing to try and take the park to our residents when they physically can't get up there because it's unsafe. So I think that, to me, has been fun. It's been challenging. We want people to be able to get up there as often as they can, but lately it seems it's more about virtually being able to see what's going on. If people haven't seen the Monrovia Falls Trail, there's a great walking tour done by Eugene Sook, who documents very well what it looks like. And you can go online on the city's website, and you can actually go do what we call a virtual walking tour and see the Falls Trail as of just a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I so appreciate all of those virtual efforts. I myself have been itching to get up there, and so it's always it feels good to be able to take a look. And for folks that don't know, the City of Monrovia does have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to find some of the videos that we're talking about. And yeah, definitely take a look. And the Monrovia Canyon Park also has an Instagram where they share some really great photos about wildlife that's coming back in, and things about that recovery process. So that makes me really happy to see. I see that we have a question here in the chat. Oh, this one's about the library. When the library will open. We are currently open for limited service right now. You can come in, I believe it's 10 to 3, Monday through Wednesday, 12 to 5, Thursday through Saturday. So yeah, you can come in. We have limited browsing. We ask that people keep their visits to about 30 minutes just to kind of keep things safe and to allow people to be socially distanced in the library. But yeah, and we're still doing curbside service as well. So please feel free to come on down. And if you have any questions, we have a library reopening page on the website that we'll be updating in the next couple of weeks as well. And it also has more information about our curbside service and then some. So thank you for that question about the library. And this is a question. Oh, I see a question about the restrooms during the Friday Farmers Market. I don't believe that's a question that I can answer at this time, but I can definitely kind of raise that with our supervisors and see if we can get some more information. But yeah, thank you for that question. Does anyone have any questions for Dylan? You can go ahead and put those in the comments and I can relay those over. And while we wait for any final questions, I kind of wanted to just bring it back quickly to some of what we talked about with mental health as it relates to the fires, climate change, and sustainability. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom to share with the community when it comes to our mental health, when it relates to these climate disasters and anything else related to sustainability?
Absolutely. So one of the significant consequences of the Tubbs fire for me was I suffered from PTSD. You know, every day I had to drive back and forth to work. It took about a week and a half or so for the roads to be reopened. But every day I had to go back and forth to work and drive past burn areas where homes were gone. I mean, we're talking neighborhoods were gone. And you know, questions I would ask myself are why, how could this happen? Why would it happen? And I'm a religious person, so you know, how could God let this happen? It was constantly going through my head, and it was a heavy burden. And I honestly found a lot of solace in just being able to work, but I didn't realize how much of a toll it was taking on me. And then when you couple that with, you know, having a young family, my wife was pregnant with child number 3 at the time. She actually had to evacuate our kids in the middle of the night, and she actually drove through flames trying to get the kids out of town, and didn't tell me about it for a couple of days. And my kids saw the fires, and one of them had nightmares, and he would cry out in the middle of the night, and you know, it would wake me up, and it was the most awful sound I've ever heard, right? And you know, a lot of times we're taught just to, you know, kind of bury those or just live with it or just move on. And you know, it absolutely took a major toll on my mental health, on my physical health, on my spiritual health, on everything. And I think the way I grew out of that first was I spent time with a really good therapist who helped me work through a lot of the pain, the anger, the hurt. And, you know, I think it was something where since then, I've been very vocal with people about addressing their mental state of mind, taking time to relax. For some people, they might want to talk to a therapist. For others, they might just want to go for a bike ride or go on vacation or go sit at the beach or whatever. And it's not the same for everybody, but we have to find ways to address our own state of mind. It can be a significant deterrent to our happiness and, you know, an excellent quality of life. It absolutely can. So I encourage people to keep yourself in check, to talk with your, you know, if it's peers, if it's coworkers, if it's your doctor, even if you've got a therapist, to talk openly, don't be embarrassed about it. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have these, you know, feelings. And I think the important thing is we learn how to confront them, to talk about them, and how to overcome them if necessary.
Yeah. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I hope that anyone that's joining us today or anyone that watches this in the future can really, you know, take that message and, you know, always, you know, take care of themselves and take care of their loved ones, and, you know, kind of feel less fear in, you know, talking about their feelings and getting, you know, the help that they need, because, you know, life is, as we know, is challenging already, and we've been through a very particularly challenging couple of years. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And we have, this isn't a question, but this is a comment. Thank you for the information that comes out in the city manager's update concerning water usage and saving water, especially today's graphic about water in the garden. So just a thank you to be relayed there. And then also another thank you for sharing important tips for mental health during Mental Health Month. For folks that don't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which is, you know, another great reason for this topic to come up. And I think those are all the questions that we have. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we close for today?
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, Stephanie, and just share my experience. It's always humbling, and it always takes me back to special moments in my life. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone for listening. If ever there's something that comes up, if you want different information in the city manager update, there's something you're looking for, please don't ever be bashful about reaching out and asking. I'm more than happy to get you the information you need. I'm happy to talk on any subject anytime. And I just want to say thank you again for inviting me to be here. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If at the end of this live, if you could go to the link in our bio to take a survey, that really helps us out with the grant process. Thank you so much everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye everyone.